Hey you guys, today I'm going to give you 3 things you can do to quickly create consistency in your photos and start developing your photography style. I really wish someone had just handed me this when I was starting my photography business, because I remember frantically Googling things like, what does consistency in photos even mean? How do I create consistency in my photos? How do I edit consistently? How do I create a photography style? How do I stand out as a photographer? What is even the first step? What am I actually supposed to be doing? It was overwhelming, to say the least, because what I was really trying to figure out was how to create consistency in my photos and develop a photography style that actually felt like me. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what consistency in your photos actually is, what's on the other side of developing a clear photography style, and most importantly, I'm going to give you 3 actionable steps to help you get there faster. But before we jump into that, I want to address something I hear all the time. Most photographers think consistency in photos is about standing out. But what does that even mean, standing out as a photographer? Are we just trying to be louder, different for the sake of being different? To me, that's kind of a vanity metric. And what actually matters is that your work is clear and consistent enough that the right clients recognize it, feel something from it, and trust you enough to book. That's where consistency becomes really powerful. All right, class is in session. Grab your notebooks. I promise there's no pop quiz. I've been a family photographer since 2012, and I've built my business twice. Once organically and then again more intentionally when we moved to Austin. Now I help other photographers focus on building sustainable, profitable photography businesses by attracting the right clients, not just more clients. I'm a Click Pro, a Hello Creative Pro, and an NAPCP Master Photographer. But honestly, consistency in my photos didn't really click for me until I was working on my Click Pro submission. For Click Pro, you have to submit 150 images, and every single one has to meet a really high standard. They're evaluating things like technical correctness, lighting, composition, and one of the categories is a clear and consistent photography style. And I'll be honest, that was the hardest part for me, because I kept thinking, how do I get 150 images with different subjects, different lighting, different locations to all feel cohesive? That question forced me to really define what consistency in photos actually means. Consistency in photos isn't about everything looking the same. It's about your work feeling connected, no matter who you're photographing, where you're shooting, or what the light looks like. And editing your photos is part of that, but it's actually just one piece. A big part of developing your photography style is how you see as a photographer. What are you naturally drawn to? Are you drawn to connection and emotion, movement and play, or more calm, simple posed images? 2 photographers can be in the exact same location with the same family and create completely different images because they're noticing different things. That's the beginning of your photography style. Consistency in photos always shows up in how you shoot. Things like the kind of light you're drawn to. Do you consistently look for backlight, soft light, directional light? Your composition. Are you shooting wide and environmental, or are you tight and focused? Your angles, your lens choices. All of that starts to shape your work, because if one session is backlit and airy, and the next is harsh overhead light, and the next is dark and moody, it's going to feel inconsistent no matter how you edit your photos. This is why consistency actually starts before you ever get to editing your photos. It also shows up in what you prioritize during a session. Are you focused on capturing real connection, perfect posing, candid moments, beautiful light? Your priorities guide your decisions, and those decisions shape your final images. And then yes, Editing your photos is where everything comes together. This is where your consistency in photos becomes really visible. Your color, your exposure, your tone, your skin tones, which are huge, by the way. And if you want to go deeper on skin tones specifically, a few weeks ago, I made a video all about editing photos for natural skin tones that I'll link here. But editing your photos should support what you're already doing, not try to fix completely different approaches. So, if I had to simplify it, consistency in photos is when your images feel like they were all created by the same person on purpose. Not like you woke up and chose a completely different personality for each session. We've all been there. When I developed consistency in my photos, a few really important things happened. First, I became so much more confident and at ease with my clients because I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't hoping the photos would turn out well. I knew what I was going for and I knew I could deliver it. And your clients can feel that confidence. It changes the entire experience for them. Second, I became way faster and more efficient with editing photos. Instead of sitting there tweaking every image differently, I had a rhythm, a process. And that matters more than you think because it saves time, reduces decision fatigue, and honestly makes this whole business feel a lot lighter. Third, I felt comfortable charging more for my work because when your results are consistent, your pricing starts to feel backed by something real. You're not just charging more, you're delivering something reliable. And finally, and this is the most important part, consistency in photos allows the right people to find you and connect with your work. Your photos start to speak clearly. So if you've been struggling with consistency in your photos or trying to figure out your photography style, this is where we're going to simplify it. When somebody lands on your website or your portfolio, they're not confused. They immediately know if your work is for them. And that's what builds trust. That's what leads to inquiries, and that's what leads to better clients. The first step to creating consistency in your photos and developing your photography style is something I call the 3-word exercise. This is something I learned in a photography course, and it was the very first thing I did when I started working on my 150 image Click Pro submission. And I am not exaggerating. It changed everything for me. So here's exactly how to do it. First, grab a notebook and a pen, set a timer for 3 minutes. And for those full 3 minutes, you're going to write down every word you can think of that describes your photos. Words like emotive, light, airy, playful, happy, high key, low key, true to life, authentic, polished, dreamy, backlit, whatever comes to mind, just write. And don't overthink it. This is not the time to be picky or perfect. Just get it out of your head and onto paper. And I want you to actually commit to the full 3 minutes because the first 30 seconds are easy. But the real clarity usually comes after you run out of the obvious words. Next, choose 1 or 2 photographers whose work you love, people whose photography style you're naturally drawn to, and do the exact same exercise again. But this time, you're describing their work. This part is really important, especially if you're just beginning or trying to figure out your photography style, because it helps you start to see the gap between where you are and what you're drawn to. Now, look at all your list, and from everything you wrote down, I want you to choose 3 words that you want your photos to be known for. Not 10, not 5, 3. Circle them. And then, this is where most people stop, but I don't want you to. Print them, write them on a sticky note, put them next to where you edit, put them in your camera bag. You need to see these words often because this is where consistency in your photos actually starts to take shape. From this point on, every decision you make, how you shoot, how you edit, how you prepare for photo shoots, what you share should be filtered through those 3 words. When you're culling a gallery, when you're editing photos, when you're choosing what to post on your website or social media, ask yourself, does this image reflect my photography style? Would I describe this photo using my 3 words? If it doesn't hit all 3, that's okay, but it should at least hit 2. And if it doesn't, it's probably not aligned with the style you're trying to build. This is such a simple exercise, but it creates so much clarity. Because instead of guessing what your photography style is, you're defining it. And instead of your work feeling all over the place, it starts to feel intentional. You'll be amazed at how quickly this starts to create consistency in your photos without you feeling like you're forcing it. It's kind of like giving your photography a personality instead of letting it have an identity crisis before every session. Okay, the second step to creating consistency in your photos might feel a little counterintuitive because you know how people always say if you want to get really good at something, you have to go all in on it, not be juggling a bunch of different things at once. Well, that's exactly where this comes into play. Your photography style doesn't just come from editing your photos. It starts with how you shoot. And confident shooting comes from simplifying your environment. What I want you to do is narrow your location list. Choose about 3 to 4 locations that you offer to your clients and really commit to those for a season. A few months ago, I created a video walking you through exactly how to build a location guide, and I'll link that here in case you want help choosing your spots. But here's a little bit of advice when you're thinking about what locations you want to narrow down. Choose locations that aren't too far of a drive, that you can return to easily, and also that give you a little variety. The goal here isn't limitation, it's intentional repetition. Because when you go back to the same places over and over, you start to learn them in a completely different way. You learn the light, the seasons, your angles, your favorite spots, and instead of guessing, you start showing up with clarity. It lifts the mental weight of adjusting to new locations all the time. It gives you direction, and most importantly, it allows you to be more present with your clients. You're calm, confident, and able to lead the session instead of figuring it out as you go. And this is where consistency in your photos really starts to show up, because your shooting becomes more consistent, editing your photos becomes easier too. It all builds on itself. And if you're worried your photos will feel repetitive, they won't. Your clients are different, the light is different, the moments are different. What becomes consistent is your photography style, how your work feels. By creating these simple boundaries, you give yourself space to actually grow your style instead of constantly starting over. At this point, you can probably see consistency in your photos isn't just one thing. It's your photography style, your shooting, and your editing all working together. The third and final step to creating consistency in your photos is simplifying your editing so it supports your photography style instead of competing with it. And this is where I see a lot of photographers get stuck, because it's really easy to think that consistency in photos comes from editing. But in reality, editing your photos should be refining what you already created, not trying to fix a bunch of completely different approaches. I actually want you to get comfortable shooting in all kinds of lighting, backlight, open shade, directional light, but consistency in photos comes from how you approach those situations. If your shooting decisions are changing every time, editing your photos will feel unpredictable too. So instead of overcomplicating your editing process, I want you to focus on creating a simple, repeatable edit. Think of it as your home base. That means a similar exposure level, a consistent color temperature, and a similar tone across your images. You're not reinventing your editing every time. You're repeating what works. One of the easiest ways to create consistency in your photos is through batch editing. Edit one image well and seek it across similar lighting. and make small adjustments from there. This alone will make a huge difference. And let's talk about skin tones for a second. If your skin tones are consistent, your work will feel consistent. So use skin as your anchor. Keep it natural and keep it steady across your images. Now, I do want to briefly talk about presets or actions. Presets are if you use Lightroom to edit, and actions are the same idea, but for Photoshop. So this is kind of crazy, but for the first 10 years of my photography business, I didn't use any purchased presets or actions at all. I either hand edited my photos or created my own, and honestly, every time I tried presets, they didn't feel authentic to me. Eventually, I did find a set that worked really well for me, and that is the Greater Than Gatsby actions in Photoshop. They're layered and specific, and so there's less of that tendency to over edit or have colors go a little wonky. They were a game changer for me. But, and this is important, it wasn't the presets themselves that created consistency in my photos, it was how I used them. At first I felt overwhelmed by how many options there were, so I experimented, figured out what worked for my photography style, and then created a favorites folder with just the ones I used all the time so I wasn't constantly searching. And that's really the takeaway. It's not about having more presets or actions, it's about having a consistent editing approach. So whether you hand edit, create your own presets, or use something pre-made, keep it simple, keep it repeatable, and let your editing support the consistency you've already created in your photos. When you combine all three of these steps, defining your photography style, simplifying your shooting, and creating a consistent editing process, that's when your work really starts to come together. That's when your photos start to feel cohesive, and that's when you feel more confident. And that's when the right clients start to recognize your work and connect with it. So soon I'm going to drop a new video with a short exercise that will help you really lock in your tones and colors when editing your photos. It's something I did early in my photography career, and I still think about it today because of how accurate and helpful it was. I think you're going to find it really interesting. So I hope you'll come back and watch that one too. And also, I have to admit something. At the beginning of this video, I said there wouldn't be a pop quiz. I lied. Here's your quiz. Go down to the comments and tell me your 3 words. I'll give you a gold star. No, but really, I would love to see what you come up with. Please do share your 3 words. And if this video helped you start creating more consistency in your photos or think differently about your photography style, go ahead and like this video and subscribe, because I have a lot more coming that will help you build a photography business that actually feels good to run. Okay, seriously, thank you so much for being here.